Welcome to Cricket World TV Hotspot. It's time for another edition of our County Cricket Hotspot with me, John Pennington, and joining me once again, Matt Carter. Hello, Matt.
Afternoon, how you doing?
I'm very well indeed. Lovely weather here in the UK. We're taking full advantage of it. Let's start with LV County Championship Division 1 this week, Matt. We've titled this hotspot, Are Durham title contenders after their win against Sussex this week? Just talk about maybe as one of the main talking points this week. Are Durham going from relegation contenders to title contenders?
Yeah, out of nowhere, really, Durham have come. I mean, beforehand, they'd only lost one game, I think, out of 7. So it's been a curious season, really, for them. You consider normally they're a side who don't tend to draw any games. It's either one thing or the other, but they've added a bit of batting stability to the game. But the last 2 weeks, they've won 2 in 2 now, and you think only 3 teams have actually won consecutive games this season, so it isn't that difficult to suddenly get yourself in the mix. And they do have a game in hand, and they're just over a win behind, so they're certainly giving themselves a chance. Whether they've got the same firepower that they had last year to string consecutive wins together regularly remains to be seen. I mean, Graham Onions obviously he is injured, and when he has been fit this year has struggled to reproduce the remarkable form of last year, and Chris Rushworth hasn't produced the same sort of form, and they are going to lose Ben Stokes, you'd imagine, to England, who has probably been given them the impetus to kick on and go on this little run of form, together with the Australian John Hastings. But you look at Durham, they've been there before, they've got that experience. A lot of these other sides in the title race haven't got that, and that could be pivotal as things develop. And their batting's performing great as well at Chesley Street, where it's not easy. Mark Stoneman and Scott Borthwick are doing what they need to do to give the bowlers enough to work with. And they're suddenly a danger, and I think a few sides will be looking over their shoulder, particularly if Durham can beat Yorkshire in their next game, which is not next week but the week after. That is probably the big game for Durham. If they win that one, then suddenly, yeah, they're right back in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to come on to Yorkshire next, because for me they again underline their credentials, really, because they're still ahead, and a big win, a massive win over Warwickshire this week, even without a number of their England stars, which is a topic we've touched on many times before. They're still the leaders. They're there to be shot at.
Definitely. I mean, Yorkshire are pretty much the figure of consistency. They've been there throughout the season. This was an important win because they'd drawn 2 games where they'd lacked the bite to really bowl sides out in the second innings. I know they played on a really flat pitch at Sussex last week, which didn't help. But this was also the first time they've won without Liam Plunkett, and perhaps it coincided with Ryan Sidebottom's return. I mean, even at 36, he is a huge inspirational figure for them, and it was a fantastic win. And I think of all their 4 wins, they've all been by massive margins, and they've now beaten Warwickshire twice, and they've beaten Northamptonshire twice. So the only thing with them is whether they can beat the sides around them now, with no fixtures against Northants left, and they could perhaps do with, at some stage, stringing back-to-back wins together, something they haven't done yet. But I mean, every indication is that they are going to be there at the end of the season, there or thereabouts, and they've got such brilliant depth that it's very hard to see them falling away.
Now, if we were maybe to pick a team of the week, and I'm thinking across all formats here, I think or week or 10 days, how well have Nottinghamshire been? They've been winning everything. T20 Blast games, winning county championship games, and of course this week, quite importantly, in terms of the title race, inflicting a first loss on Somerset as well. So they can't be discounted either.
No, I mean, they're absolutely flying at the minute. It's not as you say. I mean, they've doubled their championship win count this week, doubled their 2020 win count this week. So they're having a quite wonderful time of it, and they are the side. They're carrying the momentum at the minute, and it's that batting line which is so intimidating. I think they've got 3 of the top 5 run scorers in the championship. They've got guys in the form of their lives. I mean, Patel and Vessels, they're both performing absolutely brilliantly, and they just blew Somerset away on the opening day. And after that, there was no way back for a side who, prior to this, hadn't really been put under substantial pressure or ever looked like losing a game. And they are just flying at the minute. And even though the bowling is not as good as some of the sides, that batting lineup, it's just going to make them very, very tough to beat. And you consider the 2 sides they've beaten during this period as well, Middlesex and Somerset, two of their probably 3 genuine rivals, and they do look very, very dangerous. And I think there'll be plenty of sides worried about them, and it probably is going to be the side who can go on the longest run of momentum, and at the minute, not so looking like that.
Good stuff. The other game, of course, this week, Lancashire beating Northamptonshire, which I think we all predicted, and Northamptonshire looking increasingly likely to be relegated, of course. Championship Division 2 was quite a quiet week, really. I mean, Kent beat Derbyshire, Surrey beat Leicestershire, and the Glamorgan-Gloucestershire game was drawn. Anything really that sort of jumped out of you from those particular games, Matt?
Well, probably with the exception of Surrey, there wasn't a lot going on. I mean, that was Surrey's first back-to-back win since 2011, so that's a pretty big thing for them. I mean, I know it's only Leicestershire, and we can talk about the ineptness of them and Derbyshire for only so long, but certainly they are starting to turn the corner now. Surrey, their young players are starting to really come on. I mean, Ansari had an excellent game again. I think he's averaging now under 30 with the ball and 65 with the bat. He is having a brilliant season, Ansari, and there's a couple of other guys as well. Gareth Batty's actually come back, obviously not a young guy, but he's really transformed the team a little bit, Batty. You think he's taken his wickets in under 19, and certainly just maybe, if Worcestershire or Hampshire do stutter a little bit, they might think they've got a chance of getting in the mix there.
Good stuff. Well, the T20 Blast continues. The weather's been fantastic. Crowds have been coming out. Just briefly, if you can, bring us up to date with where we are in that competition, I should say. Obviously, there are games going on tonight and over the weekend. So just to give us a sort of brief overview of who's sort of leading the way at the moment.
Yeah, it's a tournament that isn't quite as congested as many of us predicted, really. I mean, in the North Division, Lancashire and Worcestershire are the form sides, and they're probably only 2 or 3 wins away from booking a quarter-final spot. After them in that division, it's fairly up in the air with a few sides out the running. The South Division is similar as well. Hampshire, who won last night over Glamorgan, them and Essex look pretty much near on certainties for the last 8, and then Surrey are also looking dangerous, and then there's a whole cluster of sides fighting for the final quarter-final spot. But yeah, as you say, it's been excellent. The weather's been perfect for it, and the cricket generally has been of pretty high standard.
Yeah, a lot of the teams you mentioned there have actually got quite a good pedigree, quite a good history in 2020 cricket, and that doesn't surprise me so much, because the longer you play, as you say, 10, 12, 14 games generally, the better sides are going to end up at the top. We've talked about some players already, Matt, but which players in particular have impressed you perhaps in the last 7 days or so, or since we last did a hotspot indeed, both in the County Championship and the T20 Blast?
I think it's worth giving Mark Stoneman a mention at Durham, actually. I know we mentioned him earlier on, but he's a guy who, his first class average is pretty ordinary at 31, but he averaged 40 last year on a really testing Chester Street pitch, and he's already got 3 centuries this year, and he's a player who is improving and well worth the mention. Another guy, Stephen Croft, I don't think he's scored a century since 2012, and he's got 2 in his last 2 games, so that's an excellent achievement for him. With the ball, Craig Overton's doing excellently at the minute for Somerset. He's taken 24 at 22, and then Tom Smith, his record is just phenomenal at the minute. He's taken 40 wickets at 19. He's averaging 37 with a bat, and he really is keeping Lancashire in the hunt at the minute. So he probably, arguably, is the all-round player of the season at the minute.
That's a big call, but one that I think, not too many would disagree with. I want to sort of finish this week's show with a bit of a new feature, Matt, called On the Spot. We're not about to start taking penalties, but I'm just going to throw open a bit of a debate, if you like. And Matt, I want to ask you, is Alastair Cook still the right man to lead England? And we'll see if any of our viewers want to get involved with this as well by giving their comments. So over to you.
I think he's on very dodgy ground at the minute. I think if there was a standout candidate to come in, I would presume he would be gone. But I think that there's just a lack of candidates. But his batting form is so poor that it can only go on for so long, and his captaincy isn't exceptional enough to mask that poor batting form. I mean, credit to England, they came out and they did actually fight for him on that final day, and to show perhaps they are behind him, but. On the other hand, that final day fight did mask what in reality is a very poor series loss to lose to Sri Lanka. I think there's only so much longer Cook was going to go on. I wouldn't have been surprised if he'd gone after that Sri Lanka series. It looks like he's going to go on, but a disappointing start to that Indies series, and I just think the position may become unattainable, and perhaps Ian Bell or Stuart Broad will come to the reckoning. Bell was set to face the media after that torrid 4th day after Sri Lanka, so who knows, maybe they're preparing him for the role, but certainly Cook's time is close to being up, I'd imagine.
Good stuff. Well, of course, India are in England at the moment. They're playing down at Grace Road, the first day of their tour game, so we'll be keeping a close eye on that and a whole lot of other issues on cricketworld.com, including any developments in the Alastair Cook. Will he, won't he stay on as captain? Matt will be doing his usual county cricket analysis as well for us. But for this edition of Hotspot, it's thank you very much for Matt for your time today.
Thank you very much.
And thank you very much for watching. From both of us, goodbye for now.